Hi, everyone. This is The Love Code, and thanks for joining me today. This is a program that I really hope will uplift you, inspire you, open your hearts, and connect you to the world of infinite possibilities. Especially, this is such a perfect time to be inspired. So I'm so glad you're joining me today as we have these weekly conversations with spiritual teachers, spiritual healers, people on interesting paths of their own personal spiritual journey. And as always, we have a great guest in store for you today. Before we go there, I just want to invite you, if you're listening for the first time, I always like to welcome new listeners, and I always like to invite you to either go to my website, which is dr for drcherylselman.com, and opt in there, because I get to send the archives of all of my podcasts to you directly. I have a second show on Progressive Radio Network, which is every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's called What Women Must Know. So if you go to Dr. Cheryl Selman and opt in there, you can actually get my weekly shows right to your inbox. Or if you go to my Facebook page, which is What Women Must Know, that's the name of my other show, you can just friend me there, and you'll see that my weekly shows are posted on my Facebook page as well. So either way you go, you can catch up with all of the great guests that I have every week, and hope you'll be joining me every week as well. Oh, we all need to be uplifted and inspired these days, and there's so much inspiration, so much healing open to us. So I am doing my best to share that with you. And you'll love my guest today and what we're talking about. We're going to be talking actually about a fascinating subject. And for all of you out there who love horses, I used to play with horses when I was a little girl, and I had my cowgirl outfit, and I had my rocking horse, and I would rock for hours with my cowgirl hat on. I had a horse fantasy. So we're going to be talking about how horses help to heal our dysregulated nervous system. And my guest today is Cindy Jacobs, who is coming to us all the way from Victoria in Australia. So I'm so excited to have Cindy. And just a little bit about Cindy. She is the founder and program director of Free Rein Australia since 2004. She previously founded and managed a change management business serving large corporations in Australia and overseas for over 15 years. Cindy also worked as an executive coach focusing on personal, professional, and leadership development. In addition to being a certified coach, she is a transpersonal counselor and a somatic experiencing practitioner. Her work is inspired by her own experience with her herd of 16 horses and her discovery of what they offer to human growth and development. So we have a great interview in store for all of you, and I'm so happy to welcome Cindy all the way from Victoria, Australia. Hello, Cindy.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a real privilege. I really appreciate it, and also sharing my discoveries of the potential that horses have for us to heal our traumas and to grow spiritually, and even heal our own illnesses or disorders. So it's like the best kept secret, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share what I've discovered.
Well, thanks for being with us, and I'm so glad I discovered you. You know, as I said earlier, I'm kind of an urban cowgirl, believe it or not. You know, I actually lived at one point in my life on a horse ranch, a horse farm. They called it a horse farm in south part of England, and I had a friend who owned this property, and she would be riding a huge, beautiful white Arabian stallion. And I was on a little Welsh mountain pony. Can you get the image of that? And, you know, we'd ride together, and I felt like I was living Santo Panzo Sancho Panza's life, Men of La Mancha, and this little horse, this little pudgy horse with this a big stallion next to me. It's like, it was so funny. But that was such a great time, and I would muck out the stables, and this little Welsh mountain pony was so well trained, and we just ride around and work with the kids, and it was a wonderful time. It was like living one of my fantasies of hanging out with horses, and just being in that world. And so it's great to have you, because horses are really magical animals. I don't think we truly appreciate the intelligence of them and how they can really support us in our healing. So tell us a little bit about how you found your way into the world of horses as therapists for us.
Okay. I'm not a horsey person, so I used to ride a long time ago, but I was more of a hanger-oner than a rider, so I really, I wasn't, that wasn't meant to be my path. And but I'd always had an obsession with horses, like a lot of little girls. And by the time I had reached my 40s, early 40s, I thought, well, there's really I'm going to have to give up that dream. And a woman that was working for me at the time had some horses, and she invited me up to her place, and it just ignited my obsession, because that's what it is, an obsession with horses. And so I just had to have one. And so she helped me get my first horse, and then then my second, and then my third, and I just started to accumulate horses. I just loved them so much. And my partner at the time,
I just have to jump in, Cindy. That's such an interesting image. Right? Some people have an obsession with shoes, right? or sweaters,
could be cheaper,
or something. But no, you have horses. You collect them. That's an expensive obsession.
I know. In fact, our medical system here, our government system is called Medicare, and I often joke that Medicare should cover horse obsession in their plans or their treatment or whatever, coverage, because it can be quite an obsession. So so I accumulated these horses, and I just loved them, and each one was just taught me something else. And at the time, I was attempting to ride them, and not very well. And I had a partner, and he had a particular horse named Royal, and she was this big horse, like she must have been on steroids, because she was massive. And one day, after it had been raining, surprisingly, we got rain in Australia, it had been raining for several months, we went out to visit our new little herd of horses, and she touched the electric fence and spun around and ran away from it. And I was about, I don't know, maybe 50 feet away, and she literally ran over the top of me. And before that had happened, I would joke about her not having a personality, like just being like lights on, nobody home. And because I didn't realize that she was dissociated. And so she just wasn't in her body. She was just this body that was just moving around and disconnected. And I didn't realize that until that moment when she ran over the top of me. And it was like it was in slow motion. As she stepped on me, she ripped away my ligaments from my knee, and then she stepped on my elbow and ripped that away, and then she put her hoof on my chest, and I'd put my hand across my chest, and I was thinking to myself, no, not the boobs, not the boobs. And she put her hoof on my hand, and in that split second, it was like time stood still, and we both knew instantly that if she put her weight on my chest, that she would have punctured my lungs and probably killed me. And so she knew it, and I knew it, and like I knew that she knew, and she knew that I knew. It was just this moment where we both just merged into that knowingness. And so she shifted her weight off me and off my chest and kicked me in the face instead, and left me sort of in a pile in the mud. And so my partner took me to the hospital, and there was no serious damage, and we came home later that day. And she was in the arena with a few other horses in the far corner, and I walked up to the fence, and this is a horse that never connected with me, it was never there, and she left the safety of her little herd friends, and she ran all the way across the arena and stood in front of me. And I don't know where this thought came from because it wasn't mine. And she just stood there, looked me up and down, and she said, "Oh, thank God you're okay," because the others told me I was going to be dog food, and I was so worried. And then she spun around and left. And I'm standing there going, what the heck was that? and so that was my first taste that these beings, that like there is somebody in there and there is somebody that can communicate and that has this level of intelligence and awareness. And so it kind of started me on my journey to explore, who are you? And because I'd never grown up with horses, I don't have any preconceived ideas about how horses should be. So I was really lucky in that way that I could go with a completely open mind to, well, who is this being that I'm dealing with? And so it opened me up to receive more from them. And it was like they knew that I knew, and they started dumping on me, if you like. It's more like pushing me, go further, you need to know more, So that kind of kick-started my journey with horses, and I stopped riding horses because a little voice in my head one day said, "So do you think your horse likes being sat on and having, things in its mouth and being pulled around and told what to do?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." And the little voice said, I think you do." "Oh, okay, well, no, maybe the horse doesn't." And the horse says, "Well, would you like it?" And I go, "Well, no." And then the voice said, "So do you love your horse?" And like I knew where this was going. I go, "Yeah, I do." And then the voice goes, "And so if you love your horse, why would you?" Okay. So after that little argument that I had in my head, I hung up all 6 of my saddles and never rode a horse ever since. So, and my horses changed. It's like, they started to show more of their personality. They were cheeky. They were, they just showed up more. And so it became this journey of like, well, who are you? And so we started working together, and they started, in my opinion, started attracting people to me to work with. And so it's, I kind of think that they're using me. It's not me using them. So they're using me to get their work done. So that's kind of the short story of how I got in there. And I guess the link between, so I was pretty much mainstream working in corporate, and horses were kind of my hobby. And I would I was doing a lot of executive coaching, and I would go into Melbourne and work with my clients and come home, and I started to realize, like, oh, where is everybody? Like, they had just disappeared on me. And I discovered that feeding them didn't give me leadership rights. And so it's like, oh, okay. So I have to be a leader. I have to be someone that they respect as a leader. And it's kind of like the same thing that we look for in our human leaders. This is what the horses look for. So they want someone that's, that is respectful, that communicates clearly, that's confident, that cares about them, that's compassionate, makes good decisions, clear direction, all that sort of stuff. And the horses were looking for that in me too. So I started on my own journey of, well, how do I become a better leader for my herd? And so they let me know for sure when I was not on the right path, because they would just knock me over or, just leave. It's like, come on, guys, give me a break. So they were very patient with me, because I think I was a bit of a slow learner. And I started offering programs to corporate groups. And the interesting thing about that was that, in a group setting, a work setting, people need to protect their, have to have some emotional safety. And so what was happening, though, was people would arrive and they would start bursting into tears, or they would get really emotional and start to just drop in really deep and really fast, and like it was not the right place to be, so vulnerable in a work setting, but it was almost like they couldn't help it, and I discovered that was what the horses were causing people's stuff, if you like, to just come up to the surface to be dealt with. And I realized I didn't have sufficient skills to support people when they were going through those processes. So I then went on to do my counseling training and then my trauma training, because, we all have trauma, really. It's just, whether it's a big T or a little T, we're in physical bodies, and we have stuff that happens to us that overwhelms our fragile nervous systems. And so it can be something as simple as, not simple, but, losing our job, or like right now, everyone's in trauma around the world with the shock of what's happening. And so it's possible that, that causes a bit of a disruption in our nervous system regulation. And so I had to learn how to manage that. And like I said, my horses were bringing stuff up. And so I started on another path, working with my horses to work with stress and trauma and anxiety and the full spectrum of what happens to us as human beings, from the physical traumas and things that happen to childhood attachment and childhood trauma, as well as spiritual emergence and how our bodies go through a shock when that spiritual energy in our bodies start to wake up, and what do we do with that? So it's kind of like the full spectrum, and the horses are able to support us as we, wherever we're at on that continuum. We just jump in and start from there.
So you'll have to tell us more how you do this, because when I found out about you is through some, weird Facebook connection, someplace I don't normally go, but and there was a video of you and a group of people bringing chairs to sit in a circle in your paddock, and then all these horses would come around and lie down in the circle, around the circle with everybody. Like, say they'd all be hanging out together. I mean, it's so interesting to see horses just lie down. You don't see them just lie down that easily, and I mean, and they were doing it around the circle with everybody sitting there. It was the most amazing sight to see.
That's a program that I run once a month, and we call it the water hole, even though there's no water around. It's more about the concept of gathering around something, and so it's kind of a mindfulness morning. So some people call it horse. So we just gather once a month, and we sit in a circle because the horses want to get in the middle, and so we can't see each other when there's a few horses standing in the middle of our circle. So we sit in a tight little circle, so the horses have to stay on the outside. And they do. They gradually lay down. It doesn't usually start right away, but as we become more settled in our bodies, as we become more coherent, our breathing starts to settle, our minds that stops to chatter, and we just get more and more present. The horses are responding to that, and they feel safe, and so they lay down around us, and part of the reason that they lay down too is that they slow their heart rate down when they lay down. And so if our hearts are beating too fast, if we're holding too much anxiety, the horses know that if they can slow their heart rate down, which is they slow their breathing down, which then causes their heart to slow down. And when they lay down, they even go even slower. So they're in that really slow rhythmic breathing that our bodies entrain to their rhythm, because their rhythm is more powerful than ours. So it's just physics, the stronger, more powerful oscillating field causes the weaker, chaotic one to start to synchronize or entrain with it. So just being in the horse's space without even doing anything, as long as we allow ourselves to be present and stop the mental chatter a bit. Our bodies start to synchronize to the rhythm of the horses, which then brings us into autonomic balance. And that autonomic balance is that nervous system, that autonomic nervous system, which regulates every cell, every organ, everything in the body. If that autonomic nervous system is dysregulated, and for most of us it is, because we live in a Western culture and there's always stuff going on and a bill to pay or somewhere to go and something to do. So we never really drop into that resting, settling, digesting space that the horses offer. And so, if our nervous system is dysregulated, then our bodies are compromised. Every part of our body is compromised. So over a period of time, of course, our bodies deteriorate, and then we start to experience disorders and dis-ease and pain. And so, in my opinion, and according to my training, you have to get the autonomic nervous system right first. So no amount of other things have much benefit if your nervous system is misfiring. So whether you're taking supplements or you're eating a healthy diet or you're exercising, all of those things are beneficial. But if your nervous system is not regulated, then you're kind of fighting a losing battle, because the nervous system's going to win. And that nervous system is your fight-flight response, or it's responsible for your flight-flight response. So, the anxiety, the fear, the nerves, all of that sort of stuff is always going to hijack our health. So the key is to get your autonomic nervous system as calm and regulated on a regular basis as you can for your body to function better.
So tell us some of the experiences you have had in working with your clients and the horses.
Okay. So I think probably one that stands out is a woman who had cerebral palsy. She was brought to us, and we wheeled her into the arena, and the horses had never seen a wheelchair before, so horses are curious animals, and so they wandered in and they wanted to check out this wheelchair. So they came in and they started sniffing it, and as they got closer, she was kind of hunched over, and with cerebral palsy, people have, uncontrolled sort of jerking movements, and so she was kind of hunched over, and every once in a while she would bob her head up and kind of jerk and then drop again and jerk. And the horses were really startled at first by this unusual movement, and they crowded around her, and then one by one they laid down on the ground around her. And so I've got this photo of her, of this sea of horses, horse bodies, laying on the ground surrounding this woman sitting in a wheelchair. And it took a little while. It probably took about an hour and a half. They didn't move. They just stayed on the ground. And her jerking movements all but stopped. And she sent me an email later saying that since being with the horses, that her body, she's got more control over her body, and it's not jerking as much. And so my guess is that the horses were co-regulating her nervous system. They had basically taken over her nervous system, and they were the ones that were causing her body to start to function better, because they basically were regulating her autonomic nervous system, which controls the other parts of her body. So that was pretty cool. There was another one which was a bit different, and I used to do this thing called horse Reiki, and I kind of experimented once, and I put a table in my round yard and invited my friend to lay on the table and see what the horses did. And they would come over and they would stand over her body, and I tried it on a few people, and they said, it feels like they're running energy. Like, one horse would stand at the foot and one would stand at the person's head, and they could feel energy running up and down their bodies, and each person was different. And so I started to offer that, and people had all these different amazing experiences. And this one woman came and she laid on the table, and the horses surrounded her. There was 12 horses. So the gate was open, and they came in by choice. And so they surrounded her, and then it was like a ritual, like one at a time would step up and scan her body from foot to head, and then would walk over to the rail, do a big poop, and then take their place back in the circle. And then the next horse would do the same thing, scan, poop, and then the next one, scan, poop. And they went one by one around the circle in that order until the last horse. And then the last horse stepped forward and with her nose started punching around her abdomen. Sorry. And so with her nose, like just kind of pushing and pushing. And later, after the session was over, the woman said that she had a 12-centimeter tumor on her pancreas, and the horse was pushing on that spot. And so my guess what happened is that energetically the horses were drawing the chemo, whatever toxic stuff was in her body, they were drawing it out of her, and they were dumping it in this poo pile, which was like a week's worth of poo. It was like, where did that all come from? And so she came back 2 weeks later, and she was in remission, and the tumor had shrunk, and she was looking like she was alive again, because she didn't really look that healthy at the time, and her care that came with her, so that she was completely different, that she had energy, that she had vitality, that there was a massive shift that had taken place since she had been with the horses. And so my guess there was, again, that the horses were clearing the toxins and the energy blocks from her. And often they touch, if there's a block of energy in our bodies, whether it's, pain or, there's been an injury or whatever it is, it's a block of energy. So pain is just blocked energy, and they will touch those parts of our body. And people often comment that all of a sudden there's movement, or there's a sense of lightness or flow, or something shifts when they touch them there. And so it's almost like the horses are directing their coherent energy to that spot, and it just causes the block to disperse, and then the body can start to self-heal. So it's not like the horses are, magical healers, but they have this capacity to break up blocked energy in our bodies. And we talk about how dogs can sniff, and they can alert us to cancer and other illnesses that people have before they're detectable on our medical devices. And so it makes sense to me that horses, having such a powerful sense of smell and such an acute awareness of the most subtle shifts in the environment, that they too can notice what's happening in our bodies, and they direct their energy to those spots. And so I observed my horses doing that quite a bit, but one day they stopped doing it, and had a client come, and the horses were like, "No, we're not going in." I'm like, "Come on, guys, go in." I'm like, "No, we're not doing it." And they just said, "Talk to the horse. We're not doing it anymore." And so all of a sudden I had to stop offering that to people, because the horses said, "We're not doing it. We're not doing it because we can clear the blocks. We can help people heal. But unless they go to the source of what caused the problem in the first place, it's only going to come back." And so we'll continue to work, and we'll continue to help people heal, but we don't want it to be passive. We want people engaged in this work and doing their own self-healing. So they basically booted me out, and I had to go do my trauma training, because it was like, all right, I've got to do more. My trauma training is somatic-based. So somatic-based meaning that it's a body-based modality. So again, it's about trauma is what happens to our bodies, and so the energy of trauma gets trapped in our bodies, and the horses and I help the client to track where that energy is trapped, and to shift it out. So, so the horses just, like one day they just said, no, we're not doing it anymore. And I had to, like, most of my business had started to come from people wanting to do the Reiki work. And I basically had to shut down for a couple of months because the horses said, no, we're not doing it. So I had to, like...
Did you get that message from them, or did you surmise it? How did you come to that conclusion?
It was from them because, the way I sense that it's from them is because I don't have thoughts like that. Like there's no preceding thought that just comes into my head like that, talk to the horse. It's not something I would say. And and they just said, no, we're not doing this anymore. So, I know they have to work hard because I don't readily hear what they have to say. So they really have to get my attention. I'm not a proficient animal communicator. And so the horses, they have to put it in a language. They have to be really expressive. They have to, like, go over the top for Cindy to get it. I'm sure they would prefer to have a human that's easier to work with, but they're stuck with me.
Well, so that's so fascinating, that they would, initially would come over and that story you told about, one after another in the circle. That's so bizarre, right? That's not usual behavior at all. I think
that's not usual.
Going on. And then they decided, no, people need to take responsibility and start doing their own stuff. We can. I get it. You have to heal yourself ultimately. You have to do the work.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
right. So it's quite a journey. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating because you do your work with your clients in the paddock, in the corral, that, with the horses who choose to come or not come, right?
Yes. So they're all at liberty and they want to work together. So if I were to bring one horse into the yard, the others would just automatically follow because they just want to be together. And they do different things. So in our pre-conversation before this call, as I mentioned, that the female horses tend to have more of a nurturing quality, and this is just a generalization, and the male horses are more expressive. And so the male horses will show us things that are happening in our lives, perhaps that we're not aware of. So apart from our physical healing, there's all the stories that go on in our lives that we sometimes don't deal with or don't know how to deal with, or not even know that how they're there. And I think my own experience was a real tough pill to swallow, because the horses will show us what we're not dealing with. And so I was with, many years ago, I was in a relationship and it was not working very well. And my former partner and I we were at each other's throats, just any conversation, and it just had barbs to it, it was just unpleasant, and the energy of it felt like we were literally at each other's throats. And so one morning I took my coffee and I thought, I'll just leave all that in the house and I'll go outside and I'll admire these two mares that were visiting my stallion. I'll just go out there and stand with them and just, soak up the ambience and enjoy the view and whatever. So take my coffee and I go outside and I'm standing in front of these two mares, and they're about 3 feet away from me with a fence in between us. And I'm just standing there and admiring them, not thinking about, my partner or, anything else, just standing there thinking about these mares and enjoying that moment. And then all of a sudden, one horse lifts her foot and kicks the other one in the throat and severs her jugular vein. And so the next few moments after that were pretty intense. And horses have two jugular veins. I didn't know it at the time, but I discovered that when my vet arrived, and so she survived. And so she was okay after that. But it took me about 10 days where I sat and I thought, those horses were mirroring me, that they were responding to the energy that I'm holding. And so, nothing is private. What the horses are teaching me is that whether you're with a horse or you're with humans, if you've got that energy in your body, whatever it is, whatever story you're holding, which you're not dealing with, it's got a lot of charge. And so for me, I realized like my horses are not safe if I don't, deal with my stuff. And so that then propelled me on another journey. And through my trauma training, I developed some skills to actually move through and clear that stuff. And that's what happens when clients come. If they may come because they want to work on, A, and then the horses go, we're going to do B, because B is what you're not dealing with. You might want to work on A, but we know that B has got more of a charge, or B is what you need right now. So they will show us in the form of their expression what's going on. And, something like one of my horses, there was a pile of lucerne hay, or alfalfa, I think you would call it. So pile of alfalfa hay on the ground, and next to it was a dead branch with some berries and leaves, and I didn't know whether it was toxic for horses or not. And the horse started eating the dead berries and the dead branch rather than eating the healthy fruit. And I was curious about that, and I said to my client, so what's happening? Why would this horse got any ideas why this horse would be eating something which may not be good for it versus, the healthy stuff? And she said, she goes, I've got an eating disorder. So we worked through that, but the horses will literally show us, whether it's metaphorically or literally, if they can, what's going on in our lives that needs our attention. And so there's more than just regulating our nervous system. They act out. And again, it's that energy that we carry. So the message that I get from that is that nothing's private, whether we're interacting with other people or we're interacting with horses. We carry that energy with us wherever we go. And at some level, others are picking up on that and they're responding to that. And so it's like it's bouncing back at us because they're responding to us. So the horses work on that level too, of showing us what needs to be dealt with.
That is such an extraordinary story. I have to say, the understanding of these intelligent beings who are mirrors, right? And they have this ability to tune in, whatever way they do that, and express what we are holding inside, and become these profound healers and therapists for us.
Yeah. It's quite an honor to be present with them and see what they show us. And part of what helps them to do that is that I don't ride my horses. I don't train them. So they're not trained, they're not ridden, they're not conditioned, they're not controlled. They're like a herd of wild horses. There are a whole bunch of mixed breeds, and most of them are rescues, and they just live as a herd. They live on 80 acres and roam and graze and just do what wild horses do. And they come in for half a day and work with humans, and they're expressive because they have no fear of being harmed or controlled or dominated or anything. So they the part that really expands my heart is the fact that they do this by choice. They don't have to. So I have a horse that has really severe arthritis, and sometimes she's in a bit of pain, and she'll walk all the way across the arena and work on a client if she's compelled to. So she overrides the pain in her knee and goes all the way over there to work on a client. And to me, it's like, wow, that horse, there's something going on there, that horse is choosing to work with the client when it doesn't have to. So I have some theories around that. If you go into more of the spiritual world of, that we're all one, and that, horses and humanity have perhaps some sort of a karmic contract to evolve together, and horses recognize that, the planet, as well as, the horse species and everything on the planet is dependent on the humans healing their traumas and expanding into their higher selves. And so the horses will work with us to help us achieve that. And as long as we hold trauma in our bodies, as long as we hold dis-ease, discomfort, pain, all those, uncomfortable, unprocessed emotions, unresolved traumas, they're all stored in our bodies. And as long as we're holding that in our bodies, it's like our soul can't drop in deep enough because our bodies aren't inhabitable. And so the horses are helping us move and clear those energies out so that our soul actually inhabits our bodies more. And when that happens, I see their faces like they light up. There's literally a change in the light that the people hold. And as they move the energies of trauma out of their bodies. And the horses help us with that. They poop and they stretch and they yawn and they bump us, they rub us. They're working energetically to help move the energies out of our body, these discordant energies, and they're like drawing it out and helping to dispel it. And so the more, what I see at the end of a session is a client that's lighter, that's brighter, that has more vibrancy, and so there's more of them themselves, like their higher self, is actually in control in their bodies, and the ego part of us, the small part of us, it kind of takes more of a back seat, so that we can still cope in our physical world. But yeah, there's almost always. There is a big shift in clients when they work with the horses, because the horses are working on all those different layers. And as I said, I think they have that's their real purpose for being here on the planet. And, if they have to be ridden to actually access a human, well then, okay, ride me, because then I can at least have some opportunity to have access to you. So it's not like they want to be ridden, but they have a purpose, as well as, everything on the planet, as we know, has some purpose for being here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's so extraordinary, Cindy. As you're talking, I'm remembering that a while back, several years ago, I interviewed an author of a book. I think that the book was The Boy Who Loved Horses. I may be wrong. But anyway, he had a severely autistic son. And,
yep.
Try as he may, right, that he couldn't really make contact with this child. He'd have these screaming fits, and it was, obviously a really challenging time. And he had a neighbor who had a horse. And at first, he kept his son away because he thought the horse would react to the screaming kid, or he didn't know what was going to go on. But eventually, that little boy started to interact with that horse and to ride on the horse. And it was the only time when he had calmed down and was more relaxed and more present in interacting with that animal. So as you're talking, I'm remembering that experience that he shared and wrote a whole book about. Actually, he took his son and his wife, and they went to the country, which is the country that has the longest history with a relationship with horses. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that country is? before I tell you.
I know the book of,
it
was Mongolia. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Mongolia.
Yeah.
And he took his son to Mongolia because they have this long relationship with horses. So it didn't always work out that way. I mean, his son didn't always like being with the horses, but they rode their horses. He took his son to a very remote interior part of Mongolia. They had to go by horseback at a certain point. There were no more roads to visit a shaman who lived in reindeer country. And it was an incredible story because his son got healed as a result of whatever happened in that adventure. But it was, all about horses.
Yeah, and I had some autistic children come to my horses, and the interesting thing is that they go straight up to the horse's behind and start patting their hind legs under the tail. Almost every single one. I wonder whether it's less confronting for them than the head, because they don't have any concept of being kicked. And my horses just stand like statues, and it's like they know the capacity. They know that that person has got some compromised nervous system issues, and I work with adults who have Asperger's, and it calms their nervous system down. And one of the things the horses do is they really help us to feel safe, because when your nervous system is calm, you're in the parasympathetic response. You're in that calm, resting, digesting part of your nervous system, which communicates that I'm safe. And when horses are laying on the ground and they're breathing slow and they're relaxed, of course, they're in that safe space, and and it's like that energy field that is just resonating safety. And so with people with Asperger's and autism, they're highly sensitive to sound and to touch, and anything that is different can be quite disturbing, as you know from that book, how that little boy was pretty extreme from memory, because I remember reading that book, and things would set him off that you couldn't anticipate. And the horses have a capacity to like reset the nervous system, and I've seen working with the autistic children and the people with Asperger's, that it brings their nervous system into more of a window of tolerance, so that they can tolerate noise, like birds, for example. One of my clients was really sensitive to birds and sand, wouldn't walk on sand. And so after a few sessions, their capacity to tolerate things that they wouldn't normally tolerate had really expanded. So I don't really have much of a explanation around that, except I just keep coming back to nervous system regulation. When the body is working the way it's supposed to, it's sending accurate messages about how safe am I, and basically it's what the body wants to know, is how safe am I. And when the body says I'm safe, it relaxes and there's more flow, and then it starts to function. As you know, when we're in a stress response, our bodies hijack, our autonomic nervous system hijacks all of these functions, like the heart and the lungs, and it suppresses the digestive system, because it's like, well, I can't be digesting food if I have to run for my life, and I have to flood my brain with cortisol because it's too slow. So I'm going to go brain foggy, because my brain is only going to get in the way if I need to make a life-changing or life-threatening decision. I can't be slowed down with an analytical brain, so I'm going to slow that down. So other functions in the body too get compromised, and so I keep coming back to, if the nervous system is regulated, the body is functioning the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, quite amazing. You're doing such tremendous work, Cindy. Are you training other people? Is there interest in what you are doing?
I have trained in the past. I have another business, I guess it's called Center for Experiential Learning, Equine Experiential Learning, and so I have trained a few people in it, and it's hard. It's hard to train people, even though I'm more than open to share it and share my mistakes, because then people can accelerate their skills faster when they know what those mistakes are. They can kind of skirt around them, because I've made about every mistake you can think of. so I'm an expert at mistake making. So yeah, I have trained some people. There are some people in Australia doing it, and it's a combination of skills. It's a combination of what your relationship is with your horses, and also what your discipline is in terms of working with people, whether you're a coach or you're a psychotherapist or a counselor or an educator. So it's adapted to whatever their discipline is.
Right. Well, I think it would be, on one hand, something that is an exciting field that, you're really pioneering, but you need the skills that you've developed over the years as well to really do the kind of work that you're doing, even though there are many people who are working with horses now and working with children or autistic children or people with post-traumatic stress syndrome. There's a lot of that work going on. It just sounds like you are creating your own variation on a theme of how best to do that.
I think that, well, for starters, it's the horses that have pushed me, and by, showing me that I don't have enough skills, go out there and get more. So they've really pushed me to keep exploring what skills I need, and I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is a modality. It's a body-based modality for healing trauma, and I love it because A, it works, and B, it's predicated on the question Dr. Peter Levine asked about 45 years ago. He said, well, how is it that wild animals have the same autonomic nervous system as humans, and they face life-threatening situations every single day, and they don't get PTSD, and humans do? What's different? And in a really simple process, there's a few steps that when we have a life-threatening situation, we then have to take an action, whether we fight or run. So we have to actually execute a defense response, and then we discharge the residual energy of the trauma. So we end up, shaking, and then the next step we do is we turn our heads and look around. And that's one of the keys, is when you're finished and you do your discharge, you turn your head and you look around, and that sends a message to the brain that coast is clear, I'm good to go, and it's over. And then that resets your nervous system so you're ready for the next threat in the environment. And humans, we don't often do that sequence. And so, at some point that sequence gets disrupted, whether we don't do it or we're not able to do it, we're not able to escape, whatever it is. If that sequence doesn't complete, then the trauma gets trapped in our bodies. And so that modality teaches us how to access the energy that's trapped, and to move and to allow the body to execute a defense response that it wants to, and so moves the trauma out of the bodies. And of course, the horses, they have the same nervous system as we do, so they get it. And when we're in the process of tracking that energy and allowing the body to execute its defense response, which could be something as simple as punching a blanket, or but it has to be done in a way that it gets activated, and so it's the body making the choice to do the movement, not the head saying, oh, I'll just punch a pillow and feel better. It doesn't work like that. So there is a proper sequence, but the horses get it. And when a person is in the middle of executing a defense response, the horses will crowd around us, and it's like, and what they're doing is they are co-regulating the client's nervous system so that they know that client can't get overwhelmed by moving the energy out of their bodies, because there's so many horses surrounding them and just pulsing this powerful energy at them, and their nervous system can't dysregulate because the energy field is too powerful. So they're able to actually move the energy of the trauma out of their bodies quickly, and it's done. It's gone, and it's permanent. So the horses, because of their nervous system, and ours are the same, and the horses get it. So I've been able to, through the guidance of the horses, I guess, is to combine the SE, the somatic experiencing modality, with the support of 16 horses, so that it makes that modality, like multi-dimensional. It's quite powerful, more so than if I was working one-on-one with a client without the horses. Then it's slower, and it's slower, and we don't go quite as deep, maybe as quickly. So the horses, my biggest challenge is to slow the process down, because we don't want it to go too quickly. But as soon as the client's body is in the energy of the horses, the body says, "Here's my chance. I want to get rid of this stuff. Let me rip it out." And we're going, no, slow it down. So it's quite interesting that the horses have such a powerful effect on us when the body knows that it's safe, and it knows that it can discharge trauma safely.
Well, it'd be pretty powerful to have 16 amazing horse therapists working on you at once. That would be an amazing experience.
It's kind of like,
I hope they get some. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like being nuked. The moment you walk into their space, you're nuked. Your body's just being zapped by them, whether you realize it or not. After being with the horses for an hour, people often, almost everyone tells me that within 2 hours, it feels like they've been hit by a bus and they have to lay down and sleep. And sometimes the clients, one client couldn't even leave my driveway. She had to pull over and sleep in her car for a little while. So because the body is recalibrating. It's like, whoa, I've just discharged all this heavy toxic energy, and now I've got to recalibrate, and it takes energy to recalibrate. And so, it is like being nuked.
It's so amazing. I hope they get some good apples or some reward, an extra carrot or something after the hard work they've done.
Yeah, they get their treats.
Well, we've come to the end of this fascinating conversation, Cindy. Thank you so much for sharing the amazing work you're doing. I want people to check you out and go to your website, which is Free Rein, REIN, like in reins of horses, freereinaustralia.com. And do you have another website as well that you want to direct people to, or is that the best one?
The other one is seahorse.com, so it doesn't have an A in it. It's SE for somatic experiencing, SEHorse.com. And
okay,
that
so
one talks
SEHorse.com.
a little bit,
yep.
Yeah, and that one talks more about what the horses do, and there's a picture in there of the lady in the wheelchair with the horses on the ground around her. So it probably has a little bit more of an explanation of what we do with individuals.
Okay, so fantastic. People can go to SEHORSE, seahorse.com. Cindy Jacobs, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. You're so inspirational, and say hi to your herd for me. Maybe I'll go visit with you one day when I'm down under.
Yes, absolutely. You have to come. I would love to have
All righty.
you.
Well, you take care. Have a great day. And thanks again for the wonderful work you're doing.
Thanks.
And I have to go. And remember to fill your week with peace, love, and harmony. Bye for now.